Alchemy Road, Backpacking, Dreamwork, and The Fool's Journey with me, C.R. Dunning Jr. Before I get into this presentation, I want to note that the title of this piece does not refer to the song and album of the same name by Rusty Tinder that was released in July 2022, which I had not discovered until after the term Alchemy Road came to me in the way later described. Introduction. In the broadest sense, alchemy can be thought of as discovering, understanding, and working with the hidden truths of nature. For this reason, I find it perfectly reasonable to suppose that architects and master craftsmen of ancient operative masonry would have been at least curious about alchemy. We know that it was a serious interest for accepted masons like Elias Ashmole. So, in this post, I want to share a personal experience in addressing the importance of contemplating and communing with nature, and I will speak to some of the ways it can facilitate our alchemical transformation as moral, social, and spiritual beings. Many traditional paths direct their adherents to a contemplative relationship with nature. In Freemasonry, we are taught that it can reveal the handiwork of the Creator and inspire us with the highest possible concepts we can have of deity. In my forthcoming book, A Rosenkreuz Oratory, I write about how contemplation of nature is emphasized in the 18th degree of the Scottish Rite and in the broader Rosicrucian movement. In that movement, nature is often regarded as the wisdom aspect of the divine. Personified as Sophia in the book of Proverbs, she speaks of herself as a master craftsman, working with God from the very beginning of creation. Of course, all over the world, the old pantheistic religions are very directly connected with nature and its many aspects. For all of these reasons, I find using a capital N in spelling nature to be a fitting act of respect. Backpacking. Several months ago, I decided that one of the ways I would deepen my relationship with nature was through returning to backpacking. I had stopped backpacking in my early 20s and had missed it despite continuing to enjoy camping and hiking through all these years. Sometime in the summer of 2022, I realized that I had the time and the health to get back into it. I began preparing with new equipment and physical training, and then in October 2022, a Masonic brother and I went to the Ozarks in Arkansas for my first backpacking trip in 40 years. It was amazing. I have been on other trips since then, each of them wonderful in their own ways. It is deeply engaging and meaningful for me to spend days on the trail with everything I need strapped to my body, the varied splendor of nature continually emerging into my awareness, often bringing me to experiences of profound awe, joy, and peace. Undistracted by anything else, being fully present in the moment comes more easily. I experience myself not as a mere observer of nature, but as part of it and connected with all other parts. In the wild, there is a recollection and immediate knowing of my oneness with the all, an awareness that often seems to easily fade into the background of other settings. Part of the shift I experience is surely facilitated by the rhythms of my stride and breath, like a kind of repetitive trance-inducing dance. I believe that the color green is instrumental as well, and there is now research showing its neurophysiological and psychological benefits. Likewise, sunshine, blue skies, and fresh air have long been known to have positive effects on our well-being. Another thing that often happens for me while backpacking is the occurrence of very vivid and poignant dreams. In fact, I more frequently have lucid dreams when I'm in the wild. Dreamwork. Dreamwork is an important part of my spiritual practice. And so it is on that last note that I want to share a more specific experience. By sunset on the first night of the trip in the Ozarks, we had set up camp atop a mountain. That night, wave after wave of strong winds blew through, and I had a series of several short, vivid, and or lucid dreams, often awaking between them to contemplate their meanings. Then, on the second night, we camped farther down the side of the mountain, near a trickling stream. It was much more serene there, and before falling asleep, we retreated to an owl hooting from across the creek. Once again, I had a series of short dreams, and this time I experienced a higher degree of lucidity through them. To be clear, I more often knew that I was dreaming during the dreams, and it was happening so often that even within the dreams, I was contemplating their meanings. At one point in this process, I decided that I would try to communicate with one of the characters arising in these dreams. Sometimes this kind of engagement offers clues to, if not plain revelation of, significant insight. Soon after this decision, I dreamed a nighttime setting that reminded me of a small bayou town in southern Louisiana. I was a solitary traveler passing through, backpacking my way along the main road through town. Most of the dreams had this element. And so it seemed to me that there could be some meaning to be found in considering where I was. I was passing a restaurant and bar, not much more than a shack, where a little combo was playing Zydeco music in the backyard, with people happily dancing along. A large woman appearing to be in her 30s stepped out to greet me. Her form reminded me of the famous Venus of Willendorf figurine. I saw this as my chance, and after greeting her, I asked, "Where am I?" She grinned and replied, "You're on Alchemy Road." Immediately, I laughed and nodded my head with understanding, still chuckling as I awoke in my hammock. A number of insights have arisen from the dreams of those 2 nights, but the one I feel moved to share comes from the woman's response, coupled with the fact that I was on a backpacking trip at the time. On the whole, this strongly reminds me of three things: the Tarot's Fool card, the Masonic path that begins with asking, seeking, and knocking, then leads up winding stairs, along a rough and rugged road, and hopefully into foreign countries to earn a master's wages, and the journeys taken by the central character in the classic Rosicrucian texts, Fama Fraternitatis and the Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz. The Fool. In backpacking, no matter how well one knows the map or how many times one has hiked a given trail, what comes with the next bend, even the next step, is always something of a mystery. A universal aspect of initiatic paths is that they highlight the importance of courageously embracing the mysteries of life, which can often seem foolish. It is an adventure in which ignorance is an inescapable fact, in part because within the finite limitations of human bodies, we cannot possibly perceive, let alone fully comprehend, the vastness and complexity in which we live and move and have our being. Like it or not, no matter how intelligent and experienced we may be, each of us cannot afford being foolish in some measure. One way of understanding the Fool is as a representation of the divine spark in each of us, leaving behind its transcendence and entering a trek through space and time in creation. In many schools of the mystery, the Fool card is placed on the tree of life on the path joining the top sphere, Keter, which means crown in Hebrew, the emergent creative will of the divine, with the second sphere, Chokhmah, which means wisdom. This path is the first segment of what is known as the lightning flash of creation. It thus represents the initiation of the divine light moving through the various principles of life's becoming and manifestation. Remember divine wisdom portrayed as Sophia in Proverbs, and here we recognize her nurturing and guiding all that blossoms from the seed of Keter. So, our foolishness is purposeful, if for no other reason than it facilitates the discovery and development of new possibilities. It is part of the dynamics of creativity, and genuine artists can attest that they are often unable to precisely explain whence or how their greatest inspirations have arisen or where they will lead. The Masonic Initiate. In the Masonic tradition, the Fool's journey is acted out in the ritual initiation, passing, and raising of the craft lodge, and may then continue in the degrees of other rites. One of the hallmarks of the Masonic path is that it emphasizes the value of work. When backpacking, labor is an ever-present fact. The challenges of inclines, declines, deadfalls, mud, water crossings, fatigue, and pain must all be answered with the intention to carry on, putting one foot in front of the other. At the most basic level, survival itself requires some exertion, and if really living means more than merely surviving, then more effort is required. Allowing ourselves to be mindlessly carried along by the events of life is not a way to actualize our greatest potentials as expressions and instruments of the divine. An important part of Masonic teaching is that despite each of us needing to make our own efforts to learn and grow, we do not need to be alone. In our rituals, candidates are accompanied by others, carefully guiding them through the degrees of our mysteries, with the officers and other members ensuring that the wisdom of the builder's art is properly communicated. Indeed, much of that wisdom speaks directly to the fact that embracing our connections with others and accepting the duties, challenges, and benefits of loving relationships is a catalyst that greatly enhances the meanings and positive effects of our lives. Christian Rosenkreuz. The adventure in the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz not only resonates with both the Fool and the Masonic path, but it is also very directly connected with the work of psycho-spiritual alchemy. At the very beginning of this story, a beautiful feminine angel miraculously appears to invite Christian Rosenkreuz, or CRC, to a royal wedding. He is dazzled, but demonstrates his appreciation of and skill with different modes of consciousness, knowing that ordinary ways of using the mind are not sufficient for plumbing great mysteries. Meditation, prayer, visions, dream work, and observing portents in nature are all parts of his toolkit. CRC also has a healthy sense of humor, and he is a thoughtful, compassionate, and virtuous man. Importantly, he is also willing to take risks that occasionally violate the social norms that would impede his progress. He is an embodiment of the Fool, who knows himself to be such, and so he humbly seeks and submits to divine providence. Many common symbolic elements from alchemy appear in the setting and plot, and they become central to the death, rebirth, and wedding of the king and queen. CRC plays an important role in those processes, and thus all of it can be taken as allegory for his personality following divine inspiration and turning within to intentionally participate in the purification, or death, regeneration, or rebirth, and reintegration, or wedding, of various factors in his own soul. Near the conclusion of the tale, CRC is one of a small number of wedding guests who have passed all the tests to be made Knights of the Golden Stone, an obvious allusion to the Philosopher's Stone, the great boon of alchemy. For his knightly motto, he selects Summa Scientia Nihil Scire. The highest knowledge is to know nothing. These words attest to his deep wisdom regarding the mysteries of the divine. At the end of the chemical wedding, CRC is assigned to a modest role in service of the king and queen, but it is also clear that his story has not yet been completed. You're on Alchemy Road. As I reflect on CRC's adventure and my dream work while backpacking in the Ozarks, I am mindful of how his journey begins through the appearance of a feminine angel and is later repeatedly facilitated by the queen. In fact, his developing relationship with the queen is one of the most consistent and important factors in his success, perhaps even more than his own virtue, for she is gracious and helpful to him when he falters. For me, both the angel and the queen are personifications of the divine feminine. Other commentators have more specifically regarded the queen as Venus, a common figure in alchemical literature. Without negating that view, I also see her as Sophia, divine wisdom, especially in her role as Mother Nature. One of the typical things people think about backpacking is that it is a way of communing with nature. That's certainly true, but it also belies a tendency many of us have to view nature as only what is wild, undomesticated, and or uncontrollable, somehow apart from modern human society and all that we do and build there. This separation of humanity from nature is a destructive illusion and a facet of the dualistic thinking that also separates the material from the spiritual and the human from the divine for many of us. The fact is that everything we do as human beings is an expression of potentials in our nature, which itself is an expression of some of Mother Nature's potentials. Indeed, understanding nature as the manifest presence of divine wisdom suggests that just as there is nowhere outside the presence of God, there is nowhere outside of nature. Everything we encounter and do in this world is subject to nature's divine laws and dynamics, even our thoughts and feelings. In this context, no matter where we are, the here and now has the potential to be experienced as Alchemy Road. However, such lucidity depends on how we are present in the moment. It requires us to be, in some degree, self-realized fools, joyfully embracing the mysteries within and without, humbly seeking to serve the divine, honoring our interconnectedness with each other, and more consciously participating in both the internal and external processes of transformation. When we are thus engaged in life, we may increasingly appreciate how many resources and opportunities nature constantly makes available for those processes, and how ready nature is to respond to our efforts with even more. Many of the things we might typically take for granted, like bright sunshine or dark nights, blue skies or storm clouds, green prairies or barren concrete, fresh air or a polluted atmosphere, the stillness or sustained movement of our bodies, the happiness or sadness of another being, they become known as catalysts for change. Everything that impacts us stimulates change within us, and every change within us begets changes in our actions, and thus in endless reciprocal reverberations, change ripples through all of creation. These interactions happen at every level of our being, from the physical and chemical to the psychological and spiritual, both individually and collectively. Love on Alchemy Road. Contemplating this interconnectedness reveals that compassion is an aspect of love that is both required and developed by knowingly traveling Alchemy Road. Indeed, compassion is a symptom of awareness of our interconnectedness, no matter how submerged that awareness might be. At its most basic level, it is simply empathy for suffering, actually feeling some of the pain of others. As it matures, Compassion moves us to develop more complex understandings of how others are or might be harmed by our intersecting ripples of change. It goes beyond a mere platitude of affirming that the suffering or joy of others is also one's own. Greater degrees of responsibility for contributing to the ripples that cause or aggravate others' suffering are naturally acknowledged and accepted, and we more actively work to ease and prevent needless suffering while increasing joy. One's awareness of the unity of nature and realization of oneness with the divine cannot be fulfilled without an ever-growing capacity for compassion. Compassion enables us to bridge the gap that is the illusion of our separateness and move to more completely serving the alchemical regeneration and reintegration of one and all. Love's place in Rosicrucianism is nowhere more overtly emphasized than in the chemical wedding, when a circle of nymphs sings an ode to love. Their song praises love as the cause of everything worth valuing and seeking in life, and the key to the alchemical regeneration and reintegration of the king and queen. In Masonry, love's place is front and center in the form of our principal tenets: brotherly love, relief, and truth. The first two of these tenets are obviously connected with loving attitudes and actions, and the third is ritually explained as a divine attribute and a condition of virtuous relationships. Love is also spoken to with the theological virtues, where faith and hope characterize loving attitudes toward God and our fellow human beings, and charity is lauded as the supreme virtue and highest of Masonic values. Charity in this sense is also known by the Greek word agape, or caritas in Latin. It is the universal and unconditional love in which we most fully emulate divine love. Fittingly, therefore, the Master Mason's special tool is the trowel, which allegorically cements bonds of love with others. It reminds us that no matter what titles or roles we may hold, love is still our primary work. So, what of the fool's relationship with love? Perhaps it is obvious enough that love sometimes urges us to welcome things and extend ourselves in ways that seem foolish to the cool, cautious, calculating mind. For example, love enables us to actively extend compassion as charity without concern for the cost, moves us to seek the insensible, calls us to contemplate the incomprehensible, and inspires us to sing of the ineffable, each seemingly a fool's errand. At the other end of the spectrum, it is divine love that conceives and gives birth to creation, releases the sparks of our souls to journey through it, and responds to our love along the way with the nurturing of divine wisdom. Some thinkers can only regard it as a kind of divine foolishness that anything worthy of the title of God would ever do such things. Conclusion. There is no complete form of esotericism, no authentic mystical path, indeed, no genuine spirituality without love at the core. Without listening to and acting upon the voice of such love in our hearts, the love that is at once foolish and masterful, we cannot be increasingly liberated from our egoic illusions of separateness or more consciously serve the liberation of others. Love is therefore the motivating force on Alchemy Road, and it is also the pack that contains everything we need, the light that permits navigation, the path beneath our feet, and all the wonders of nature encountered along the way. Love is Alchemy Road, and we are always on it. The question is about how lucidly we are walking it.